How is it going, everybody? My name is DeMarco, and today we're diving into some deep Starfield speculation as we take a look at the possibility of dozens, possibly even hundreds of Starfield cities appearing in the game beyond the four that we already know are present, which is Neon, New Atlantis, Aquila, and the newly revealed Cydonia. Now, before we do go any further, a couple things. Number one, if you agree or disagree with anything I say here, let me know down in the comment section below. This is a community speculation video, so we're here to discuss. And number two, we're not specifically talking about cities on the scale of New Atlantis, which Bethesda has confirmed. Todd Howard has stated it is the largest city that Bethesda has ever made in a Bethesda game to date. And looking at the footage, that is readily apparent just how far back that city extends. We're talking more about cities in the traditional Bethesda sense. Much smaller, much more compact. If you've played a Bethesda game before, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And of course, we are looping in some procedural generation discussion. Naturally, I think all of us are a bit starved for any Starfield information. While these Q&A videos are great, they keep us talking about the game, they really don't show off anything new. When you look at what fans want most, in fact, there was a Reddit post that recently went up about what fans are hoping to see from Bethesda next. A lot of them state that we want to see gameplay, uninterrupted gameplay footage that shows off some of these things that Bethesda are talking about, whether it's from Q&A or expands on what we saw in the gameplay demo. And unfortunately, we're not getting that as of yet. However, I do think we'll be seeing plenty of Starfield at the rumored but kind of confirmed upcoming Xbox showcase that might take place sometime in January. But I've been listening recently to the Will Shen interview, trying to pick up on any detail that might have been overlooked, and the part that always grabs my attention is when Will discusses the ability to just place settlements on planets as needed. Have a listen to the clip yourself.
An actual whole location that can be put there. And maybe they have a problem, like one of our members was kidnapped. They've been kidnapped by some pirates, and we think they're over there. We actually are replacing a whole other location with that person in it and enemies around it. So it's a dynamically placed settlement that is taking you to a dynamically placed dungeon as you're walking through the planet.
So there's a lot of questions that have been raised, and I think reasonably so. A lot of people are wondering whether or not these locations are crafted by hand and the game selects one of them to place on a random planet, or if the game creates a random quest with a random encounter to a random planet and then creates a random dungeon on its own through procedural generation to place it on that planet, because that will have very different gameplay implications as to how we as the gamers experience some of these dungeons or settlements or locations in the game. The thing that people love, the thing that I love about Bethesda games, specifically when it comes to their settlements or their locations or their dungeons, are those moments where you find out that there's entire stories to be told there. And the concern is that when you start adding in this level of procedural generation, that it dilutes away from some of the things that made what we love about Bethesda games so great. It can either be an improvement by using some of this technology, or actually a regression. And all of us are simply hoping that it's an improvement, the way that it can dynamically create some of these worlds and environments and stories that actually adds value to the overall experience, making playthroughs unique. The thing that personally resonated with me in past Bethesda games, specifically Skyrim, because that Elder Scrolls is one of my all-time favorite franchises, was the ability to wander around and find all of these beautiful handcrafted locations that are in the game that add to the world, that they're intentionally put there for a reason, that everything feels like it has a purpose or that it was put there by design, versus what we're starting to see in Starfield, where it's like, oh, we can just place this here because the game needs it to be there. And that raises some eyebrows for some people. So I started looking a little bit deeper to some past interviews, to some past quotes, something that we might have looked over that explains how Bethesda is actually utilizing some of these systems. And I actually found an interesting one coming from former Bethesda developer Nate Percopile, who's now working on his own indie studio, Percopile Games, on the Axis Unseen. You could actually check it out on Steam. But he had some interesting things to say. Over on Twitter, he posted, quote, "For anyone who is curious what I did on Starfield, I was lead lighting artist working with art and tech, and was also making one of the major cities that has been announced, Neon, and helping on lots of other random cities / locations. if we really want to dive into and pick apart how he phrased his wording here, there's some interesting things. First off, he explicitly distinguishes between the major city that he worked on, Neon, versus the other random cities, the miscellaneous locations, these settlements that Will Shen might be referring to. On top of that, he says, quote, lots of other random cities. Now, I personally would not chalk up 4 cities as being lots. That's a couple, that's a few. However, this could very well align with some of those random locations that are being placed. So for those of us who are worried that a lot of what we might come across with these random encounters that Will Shen had mentioned, it's very likely that these are actually handcrafted places that the game is sending you to, whether it is a dungeon or a location or a settlement or a city like we might find. And this isn't so far outside the realm of possibility. In fact, it makes total sense. You look at past Bethesda games, say, let's look at Skyrim again, you have smaller settlements and towns like Kynesgrove, like Shorestone. Riverwood itself is just a small village, and one of the big things when we talk about Starfield is how it's increasing scale. The cities are bigger, the NPC density is bigger, the map is bigger, so it's not too far out of the question to say that if Starfield had an equivalent to Riverwood or to Kynesgrove, that it very well could be on the scale of a small city. And we're not talking the size of Aquila or New Atlantis, but something in between those two types of locations, those two types of sizes. And to further this discussion, to really nail in the coffin, Todd Howard has mentioned in the past how once they've created one fully realized planet, if the technology is there that allows that capability, and I'm definitely paraphrasing here, they can make 100 planets, which is no different from making 1,000 planets. It's all using the same type of tech and the same generation system. So why might that not apply to some of the cities that they make in order to allow us to have a dozen, 100, 200 different cities that players can explore? And of course, these won't be rich with robust content and tons of things, again, on the scale of New Atlantis, but I do think that it will be able to retain that handcrafted feel that a lot of us are hoping for, as we've seen in past Bethesda games. And additionally, you look at the amount that Bethesda has grown over the years, where Skyrim was just, around 100 employees, if I remember correctly, and now Starfield is somewhere over 500 people that are working on this game. It's not unreasonable to suggest that Starfield should have double or triple the amount of locations that we saw in previous Bethesda titles. And when you have someone like Nate Perkapile, who has publicly announced that they worked on other random cities that you can find, it's very likely that a lot of these locations will have the handcrafted feel that most of us are looking to experience. When I look back at some of the things that I've been right about, some of the things I've been wrong about, some of the announcements that Bethesda has come out with, the more that I look into it, the more confident that I feel in the direction that Bethesda is taking with Starfield. Even among all of my own concerns and some valid concerns that I've seen across Reddit and Twitter and different social media spaces, I think that we have a great game coming. And I will say that all of the concerns that we've probably have had, probably all of them, Bethesda has at one point or another thought of them and come up with their own solution or their own feedback about how they should proceed about those. So that in and of itself fills me with a lot of confidence too. But anyway, agree, disagree, let me know down in the comments section below. If you're new here, consider subscribing for more Starfield videos. And as always, I hope to see you all next time. So long, everybody.